Hello and welcome to the second Decode video lesson on making games with FlashPunk. In the last lesson, we took the time to set up our project and then install FlashPunk and making sure everything was working. Now in this lesson, we're going to get into drawing, by the end of it at least. But to understand how to draw things, first let's go into a little bit on how FlashPunk works. Last time, we established this concept of there being an engine, and the role of the engine being to keep everything going. What there is also is a class called FP, which stands for FlashPunk, and its role is to keep everything organized. Now these two work in tandem to keep everything under control. Now in your game, you have a working world, and you can think of a world as something like a level. And inside that world, you can have any number of entities. And you can think of entities like players and enemies inside that level. Now, every frame, which is whenever things are updated and redrawn, and in the case of this game, it'll be happening 30 times every second, the engine says we need to update. And it asks FP for the current world. And then it tells that world, well, you need to update. And then the world says, okay, if I need to update all my entities. And then it tells all of its entities to update. And they all do different things because they're all different entities with different code. So that's how everything works. And that happens sort of 30 times per second in this case. And we're going to actually demonstrate that at the moment by making a new world, a new entity, and then telling it to do something every time it updates. Alright, so let's start by making the world. So in Flash Develop, I'm going to right click on this SRC folder and click and go to Add, then New Class. Now, we're going to give it a name. I want to call it Game World. And we're going to base it on the original FlashPunk world because that's the way it works. We extend off someone else's code. So I'm going to click on Browse, as I just did, and then I'm going to go into here, this filter, and I'm going to type out World. And what's going to come up is net.flashpunk.world, exactly what we want. I'm going to click OK. And hey presto, we've got our world. That's all you need to do for the time being. Now, I'm going to right click on Source again and click Add New Class. And then in here, I'm going to make our player entity. And we're going to browse and I'm going to search for player. Not player, sorry, entity. And we're going to get net.flashpunk.entity. And that's what we're going to base it off. So we've got player based on net.flashpunk.entity. We click OK, and then we've got our player entity. Now in the player, I'm going to add a new function, and we're going to override its update method. So instead of doing whatever it was supposed to do before we overrid it, it's going to do something new. So I'm going to type inside the class, after the first constructor function, I'm going to type override public function update, opening bracket, closing bracket, colon void. And what the colon void means is it's just saying once the function's over, we're not going to give a value back because a lot of functions can give values back after they're executed. So I'm going to make a new line, open up these curly braces, and I'm going to put some code in here. And I'm going to type out our good old friend trace, and I'm going to put in something to output. I'm going to type in I am an entity, and I am updated. Okay, now, before we run it and check this, there are two things we have to do. The first thing is tell the world to add the player entity, because otherwise nothing will happen. So in the game world class, I'm going to type add in the constructor function, which is executed when the world is first made, add new player. In those brackets, with all the brackets around it. Now what this is saying is make a new version of the player object and then add it to our list of entities. Simple as that. And now in the main class, back to our engine, I'm going to make a new line after the super function, and I'm going to tell the game to add a new game world to our game. Now, what you'll notice here is that I've actually already imported net.flashpunk.fp, but you'll need to do that. So for argument's sake, I'm just going to do it again. So I'm going to type out import FP, and then autocomplete will work it out for me. I press enter, semicolon, everything's good. And in here, I'm going to type fp.world equals new game world. And that's just saying make a new version of game world, set it to the current world. And FP will sort out everything else. Now we hit play, and something to note here is this first compiling. The first time you open up Flash, develop the first compilation will take a little bit of time. That means subsequent compilations will be a little bit faster, but for now we're just going to have to be a bit patient. And here we go. So the Flash player has come up with our good grey screen, and down the bottom you can see that this entity trace is coming out very, very quickly, 30 times per second to be more or less precise. So that's working, and that's great. And that's sort of demonstrating how this update method works. But what we're going to do now is we're going to put an image in the player. And to put an image in the player, first we have to draw something. So I've got paint.net open here, and I'm going to draw something in paint.net. Now you can use whatever image editor you want to. So I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to set its size to 48 pixels by 48 pixels, because that sounds like a good size. Now, what comes up here is this blank canvas. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to go Control A and then press Delete to get rid of everything inside it, because I want the background to be transparent. Now, I've got this brush function, this brush tool selected. I've made sure I've got anti-aliasing disabled, but you can keep it on if you want, and I'm going to give it an outline. Now, it's just going to be this sort of fatso guy. It's going to look a little bit like this. Now I'm going to use the paint bucket to give him a sort of background color. He's going to have some white eyes, and give him some little iris pupil-y things in the middle there. They'll be blue. And there you have it. There's my player. Now I'm going to go File, Save As. Now I've already made a player earlier, but we'll just overwrite him and player.png. As you can see, I'm inside the source folder of my game, and what I've done is I've made a new folder, Assets. I'll delete that, and then I'll make a new one. So right-click, New Folder, call it Assets, A-S-S-E-T-S. Now assets are basically things that are part of the game that aren't code. Things like images, sound files, levels, who knows. But I'm going to go into Assets. I'm going to save a new image and call it player.png. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to save, and that's that sorted. So I'm going to go back into the game, and as you can see in here, Assets has player.png. Now, there are two things you need to do to put an image in an object. In an entity. The first thing you need to do is embed that image in the class itself, and this is relatively simple. What we need to do is straight after we've gone public class player and use that opening bracket before anything else, I'm going to open up the square bracket. I'm going to type embed, and then opening bracket source equals quote assets, because we want to go to the folder assets / player.png, and that's basically a file path towards our image that we've made. Then we're going to go closing bracket, closing square bracket, private const for constant player class. Basically that's saying embed that image into this constant, something that is unchanging player. Basically whenever we refer to player in all caps like that, we'll be referring to the image that we've just embedded. Now then to set it as the player's image, it's pretty simple. I'm going to type graphic, because that's an entity in one of the entity's properties, equals new image player. So saying make a new image and base it on that player image that we've just embedded. And I'm going to comment out this trace line because I don't want it to continue spewing things out. And I'm just going to click test project. Again, with any luck, we'll have our player character there. And boy, is he looking beautiful. Now, one thing I'd like to do before today ends is put that player right in the middle of the screen, because we want to be front and center. Now, to do this, we are going to first center the origin of the image. And I say this because currently the X and Y coordinates of the player refers to the top left of the image of the player. But what we want to do is bind the center of the image to the player's position. So that means wherever the player is, the image is actually centered there, rather than being a little bit, well, be considerably off center. So to do that, there's a nifty function for that. So what I'm going to do is going to type opening bracket graphic as image, which is basically saying, give me this graphic variable, but give me it in the form of an image. Dot center origin. And that's basically a function saying, put the origin in the middle of the image. Now when I hit play, what we will see is not much less than what we saw before. And that's because the player's coordinates are currently at 0, 0, which is the top left of the screen. Now if the image is centered around the top left of the screen, we won't see 3/4 of it. But what we can do now is move the player with a lot of ease. Now coordinates of the player's position are in the form of X and Y, and X is its horizontal distance from the top left of the screen. And we know that it is 800 by 600 pixels, the screen is, so we're going to set X to half of 800, which is 400, and Y is the vertical distance from the top left corner, so Y equals 300. And now I'm going to hit play. Just like that, our player is in the center of the screen. So that's all that we have planned for this lesson. But there are a few other things you can try out to experiment with these ideas of entities. You can make different entities with different images and try and put them in different positions. And if you really want to try something new, see if you can get the entity to move by using the update function. We'll cover how to control this player entity in the next lesson when we do keyboard input. But until then, keep programming, and thanks for watching.